So, should you get the iPad Pro or the upcoming iPad Air? In today's video, I'm going to give you guys reasons why you should get the iPad Pro and also reasons why you should get the iPad Air. Cue the intro. Hey everybody, Lumanis Time here. Welcome to yet another video. For today's video, I'm going to give you guys reasons as to why you should either get the iPad Pro or get the upcoming iPad Air. So let's get into it. So Apple recently announced the iPad Air, and for a lot of people, I'm pretty sure it has a lot of people saying, is the Pro actually worth it over the Air? So I'm gonna basically give you guys my reasonings as to why each device is gonna be worth it over the other. So let's get started with the iPad Pro. This is my main tablet, and as you guys can see, I have this awesome dbrand skin on it. This isn't sponsored by dbrand, but I know people are probably gonna ask since they don't see the normal iPad-ish background. So this is a dbrand skin. But it's not sponsored by dbrand. But let's actually get into why I believe that the iPad Pro is still gonna be the better purchase over the iPad Air. For starters, that 120 hertz refresh rate. Honestly guys, once you get into the 120 hertz refresh rate, it is very hard to go back. Although the iPad Air is very enticing, that 60 hertz refresh rate would honestly swing me away. With the iPad Pro, it's just buttery smooth when you're scrolling, so that alone, in my opinion, makes the iPad Pro worth it. But if you're somebody that's coming from an iPad that didn't have that 120 hertz refresh rate, you're obviously not going to miss it. So that's just to me why the iPad Pro is worth it, but obviously it's not going to be the same for everybody. Another reason why I believe that the iPad Pro is worth it is because of Face ID. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Face ID. A lot of people don't like the way that Face ID is implemented in the iPad Pro, but I'm not one of those people. I absolutely adore Face ID. I use it for everything. And honestly, I haven't had Touch ID for quite some time. So, I don't really miss it at all. My phone has Face ID. Hopefully the MacBooks have Face ID at some point in time, but maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but I do absolutely adore Face ID. So that, to me, is another reason that the iPad Pro is going to be worth it over the iPad Air. Now, another reason why I believe that the iPad Pro is going to be worth it over the iPad Air is because the iPad Pro is most likely going to have more RAM than the iPad Air. iPad Pros, as we know, have 6 gigs of RAM for the 2020 versions, and for the 2018 versions, either 4 gigs or 6 gigs if you have the 1 terabyte version. But in theory, I don't really know exactly how much RAM the iPad Air is going to have. We're not sure yet, but in theory, I would assume that it would probably be around the 2 through 4 range area in RAM. I can't imagine that they would put the same amount of RAM as they do in the iPad Pro. So there's things such as multitasking that's going to probably be a lot better on the iPad Pro. Or if you're in apps like Procreate, you can have more layers and stuff like that. So there is a few benefits to having more RAM. So the iPad Pro is most likely going to have more RAM than the iPad Air. So in my opinion, it's worth it. Obviously, there's a lot more things that make the iPad Pro worth it over the iPad Air. I'm not really going to go into super details, things such as the camera. Obviously, I don't really take pictures with my iPad, so that's it. It is a pro over the iPad Air, but I'm not really going to mention that. But let's actually get into the iPad Air over the iPad Pro. So for starters, the main reason why I believe that the iPad Air is going to be worth it over the iPad Pro is that there is more colors. Obviously, guys, the iPad Pro only comes in silver and space gray. With the iPad Air, you just have a ton more colors that you can choose from, and you can really personalize these things to yourself. So I do love that about the iPad Air. I do absolutely wish the iPad Pro had more colorways, but they don't. So that is going to be a pro over the iPad Pro that the iPad Air has. So the second reason why I would choose the iPad Air over the iPad Pro is price. The iPad Air is going to be a lot cheaper than the iPad Pro, where you can get the 64 gig iPad Air for $599, as opposed to the iPad Pro, the base bottom 128 gig is going to be $799. Granted, I would honestly not recommend 64 gigs to a lot of people, but if you don't really need that storage, you can definitely get by with 64 gigs and save a good amount of money. and, you know, just be really happy with the iPad Air. But I would honestly recommend going up to that 256 gig storage version. I wouldn't recommend 64 gigs to most people, but there are a lot of people that get by just fine with 64 gigs. But I will say that is a pro for the iPad Air. It is going to be cheaper than the iPad Pro. So the third reason why I'm going to say that the iPad Air is going to be a better buy over the iPad Pro is that it is still compatible with that Magic Keyboard. Guys, you can still get the amazing iPad Pro experience with that amazing Magic Keyboard and save a good chunk of money, guys. I guess that kind of still goes back into reason 2, but you know, you're spending less money for the same experience, in my opinion. So I guess that still kind of goes back into reason 2, but I am gonna say that's also a pro. Again, like the Magic Keyboard, it's compatible with the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil. So, I mean, you're honestly getting the exact same experience for the most part for less money. So I guess that's still, I'll just put that as reason 2.5. So there you guys have it. I gave you guys my reasons as to why you should get either device over the other. If you guys did like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that little bell notification so you don't miss any videos. Also, guys, leave a comment on whether you guys are gonna grab the iPad Pro or the iPad Air. If you have the iPad Pro and you wish you would have waited to get the iPad Air, let me know, guys. With that being said, this is Lumanis Time. This has been yet another video, and I'm out. Peace.